Hollywood sold the Stagecoach as a romantic adventure, but passengers' diaries tell a different story. They were wooden coffins on wheels with no decent suspension, where strangers shared space for days without a bath. Stops were filthy ranches with rancid food. Births happened along the way. People died from heat or cold, and drivers abandoned sick passengers on the road. These 21 facts came from real records that no one wanted to publish. Subscribe to our channel and comment what you'd like to see next. Number 1. Stagecoach stations were biological traps. The mattresses were never washed, and bed bugs multiplied by the thousands. Passengers would stop to sleep for one night and wake up covered in swollen bites. Those bites would get infected fast in the desert's dry heat and turn into open sores. The real problem was that every traveler carried bacteria from different cities. A guy coming from Kansas City slept on the same mattress as another heading to Tombstone. The bed bugs would bite someone who was sick and then bite the next healthy person. The stations worked like disease distribution hubs, linking places that were hundreds of miles apart. The owners of the stops knew about the infestation, but changing the bedding cost money. Doctors at the time didn't even understand how outbreaks could show up in isolated towns at the same time. The answer was in those filthy rooms where everyone spent at least one night. Number 2. Most stagecoach robberies didn't start with gunfire. They started with a handshake. Outlaw gangs in the West figured out early that it was easier to get in through the door than to attack from the outside. The method was simple. A well-dressed guy bought a ticket, sat among the passengers, and waited. Inside that cramped space, 9 armed people shared less than 2 square meters for days. The heat, the dust, and the lack of sleep built up a tension that had everyone on edge. Any quick move could be read as a threat. It was in that silent chaos that the infiltrator made his move. Some slipped laudanum into the shared water. Others waited for the early hours, when the sway of the cabin rocked the exhausted to sleep. They'd wake up without watches, without money, without weapons. And the thief? He'd already gotten off at the previous stop, smiling and wishing them a safe trip. Number 3. Between 1840 and 1870, thousands of families left the eastern United States running from something that killed more than any outlaw: hunger. Cities like New York and Boston were packed, work was hard to find, and food prices kept going up non-stop. For a lot of people, putting the whole family on a stagecoach headed west wasn't crazy. It was the only option they had left. The problem was that these trips lasted weeks, sometimes months, and life didn't wait for anyone to arrive. Pregnant women got on those stagecoaches knowing they were going to give birth on the road. No doctor, no clean water, on wooden benches that never stopped shaking. The birth happened right there with whatever was available. Many newborns didn't make it past the first day because of infections. Even so, families kept leaving, because in their minds, dying trying was better than staying put and waiting for misery to fix the problem. Number 4. On western routes in the 1850s, stagecoaches crossed stretches of desert that took days. Water was rationed by the gallon, and every stop was planned out precisely. When a passenger started showing signs of smallpox, the driver faced a simple, brutal calculation. Keeping the sick person meant risking infection for everyone and spending water on someone who probably wouldn't survive anyway. The decision was quick. The sick person was left on the side of the trail, sometimes with a canteen, sometimes with nothing. No shade, no help, no real chance. The driver didn't see himself as the villain. In his mind, he was saving 5 at the cost of 1. It was survival math, not cruelty. No one complained out loud because everyone knew that on the next trip, the one left behind could be any of them. Number 5. On Old West routes, dying far from home created a problem no one wanted to deal with. There weren't funeral homes at every stop, so the body traveled with the passengers in the stagecoach all the way to the final destination. Embalming was crude, and on long trips under the sun, decomposition started fast. Fluids leaked from makeshift coffins, the smell filled the closed space, and flies showed up in clouds. Living passengers shared the same air, with diseases coming off those bodies. Stagecoach companies charged extra to carry them, but offered zero sanitary conditions. It was take it or leave it. The law required the body to reach the recorded destination, so the driver couldn't just dump the coffin on the road. Number 6. Driving a stagecoach in the Old West wasn't a job, it was punishment. The guy sat 18, 20 hours on a hard bench under blazing sun, getting bounced around on roads that were barely more than rocky trails. His back would lock up, his kidneys ached, his shoulders burned. And there wasn't a doctor anywhere nearby. There was only one solution: laudanum. This opium-based syrup was sold in any general store. No prescription, as cheap as coffee. Drivers would take a swig in the morning to handle the pain and another in the afternoon to keep going. The problem is, laudanum didn't just kill the pain, it scrambled your head. In the 1860s, companies like Overland lost entire stagecoaches into ravines because the driver was literally hallucinating on the seat. He wasn't sleeping, he wasn't passing out. He was seeing things that weren't there and drove straight into the abyss. Everyone inside went with him. Number 7. In the deserts of Arizona and Nevada, stagecoaches faced a brutal dilemma. During the day, the heat went over 110 degrees Fahrenheit and killed horses from exhaustion. The solution seemed obvious: travel at night. But then came another problem. With no light, besides the moon, the drivers were basically steering in the dark. The wheels slammed into rocks no one could see. Passengers were thrown against the wooden walls or tossed out. Compound fractures were common, and out in the middle of nowhere there was no doctor. A bone breaking through the skin turned into an infection in 2 days. A lot of people survived the crash but died of gangrene weeks later. Wells Fargo even banned night routes in certain stretches, but the pressure from mail contracts forced drivers to ignore the rule. It was a choice between heat that killed the horses or darkness that broke the passengers. Number 8. Old West stagecoaches worked like trains in that way. Your luggage went separately from you, and the tracking system was basically just an employee's word. At the relay stops, bags would simply disappear. It wasn't an accident. Station workers resold people's belongings right there, in towns where nobody asked questions. Tools, clothes, savings sewn inside fabric, everything vanished. For a migrant in the 1870s, that luggage was literally everything he owned in the world, his entire capital to start a new life. When he reached his destination and found out his goods had evaporated, there was no sheriff to fix it, and no compensation. Some of those men, with nothing and knowing no one, killed themselves. The company marked it as lost baggage and kept operating. Number 9. Old West stagecoaches stopped at isolated stations in the middle of nowhere. At those spots, besides swapping horses and grabbing something to eat, a lot of passengers went looking for female company. The problem was that those women saw dozens of travelers a week coming from every direction. With no doctor nearby and zero oversight, syphilis spread at a crazy speed. One infected man at a station in Kansas could carry the disease to his wife in Missouri without even knowing. In the later stages, syphilis destroyed cartilage and bone. Men literally lost their noses. Whole families got infected before anyone understood what was happening. Number 10. Old West stagecoaches weren't made with families in mind. There were no separate seats, seat belts, or latches. Adults and kids shared the same cramped space, getting jolted around on roads that were more like rocky trails. One hard bump could yank a baby out of a mother's arms without warning, and the worst part? The wooden wheels, reinforced with iron, didn't stop. Records from routes like the Butterfield Overland show cases where children were thrown out and run over by the stagecoach itself. There was no quick break. The driver often didn't even realize what had happened. Poor families had no choice. It was that transport or none. The design simply ignored anyone who couldn't hold on by themselves. Number 11. Stagecoach companies relied on trail markers to cross hostile territory. Stacked rocks, broken branches, and grooves in the ground pointed out turns, descents, and water spots. Native people figured that out fast. They started removing those signs, making fake ones, and rerouting entire paths into dead-end canyons. Basically, they were hacking the GPS of the time. Even experienced drivers got lost in terrain they'd crossed dozens of times. Some stagecoaches went off into ravines at night. Others stopped right where warriors were waiting. Survivors who were found told stories nobody wanted to hear. The land the invaders thought they knew was being used against them. Number 12. Old West stagecoaches had 3 seating classes. The price decided where you sat, and in practice, your chances of making it there alive. Black, indigenous, and Mexican passengers paid higher fares and still got sent up to the roof of the coach, exposed to the desert sun or the mountain cold that cut right through you. Up there was zero protection. In the 1870s, dying of heat stroke crossing Arizona or hypothermia in the Sierra Nevada passes was common for people riding on top. Meanwhile, white passengers rode inside the cabin for less money. The system wasn't accidental. The stagecoach companies sold comfort and safety as a backwards premium product. They charged more from the people who got less. It was a business model built on segregation. Number 13. The stagecoach ran on fixed schedules and well-known routes that anyone could find out just by asking. And that's exactly what made these operations so risky. Abolitionists used false compartments in the floorboards and behind the benches to hide fugitives heading north. The problem was simple. Every stagecoach stopped at the same places to swap horses and restock. Informants knew that. All they had to do was tip off the local sheriff or bounty hunters about which line to watch. In the 1850s, after the Fugitive Slave Act, any citizen was legally required to help with capture. If someone was caught, they didn't get a fair trial. Many fugitives, and even drivers, were lynched at those stops before any help could arrive. Number 14. Stagecoaches carrying gold had a problem few people imagine. The metal was so heavy that the axles and wheels just couldn't handle it. A single strong box with gold bars could weigh more than 400 pounds, and some routes required 2 or 3 of them in the same vehicle. When the stagecoach hit muddy stretches, especially during spring rains, the extra weight made the wheels sink all the way down to the axle. Passengers were forced to get out and push, often stuck in the mud up to their knees. The worst part was when a wheel finally gave out under the load. The stagecoach would tip to the side, and anyone too close could have their legs crushed between the body and the ground. Wells Fargo drivers knew gold paid well, but the risk was real on every turn of the road. Number 15. In the 1870s, any guy could sit up on the driver's seat of a stagecoach and take the reins. There was no medical exam, no health check, nothing, and that created a problem nobody likes to mention. Syphilis, when left untreated, attacked the brain. They called it general paralysis. The man lost any sense of distance, had episodes, saw things that weren't there. Now imagine that same man controlling 6 horses at full speed on a mountain road with passengers behind him. Some stagecoach companies knew about the problem and just ignored it. Labor was scarce, and the route had to be run. Passengers reported drivers who laughed to themselves, who whipped the horses for no reason, and who missed obvious turns. Some people jumped from the moving vehicle so they wouldn't die. Number 16. Stagecoaches traveled through territory where ambushes were routine. Everyone knew that. So passengers climbed in, armed and on edge. The trouble started when the road got rough. Inside that wooden box, shaking non-stop, nobody could see clearly, and any noise sounded like an attack. All it took was a branch hitting the roof or a horse whinnying differently. Someone would draw and fire. In the tight darkness, others would react by shooting too, without even knowing where. It was panic and a chain reaction. When the stagecoach finally stopped, they'd find bullet holes in the roof, in the walls, and wounded people who had never been a threat at all. People died with no outlaw anywhere nearby. Number 17. Most amputations in the Old West didn't come from shootouts. They came from the cold. Stagecoaches crossed places like Wyoming and Montana in the dead of winter, and passengers sat for hours without moving. The real issue was clothing. Wool and leather, the most common materials back then, turned into traps when they got wet. Instead of insulating, they carried the cold straight into the body. Toes were the first to die. When the stagecoach stopped at a relay post, it was already too late. The flesh was black. With no doctor around, the driver would heat a knife in the fire and cut. No anesthesia, no proper stitching. Just whiskey and a piece of leather to bite down on. A lot of people survived the cut but died days later from infection. Number 18. On stagecoach routes through the Mojave Desert, the heat inside the cabin went over 50 degrees. With no water for hours, passengers' bodies went into total shutdown. The overheated brain started to fail like a broken machine. Electrolytes crashed, and the nervous system lost control of perception. Passengers swore they saw lakes, rivers, and the shade of trees where there was only rock and dust. Some opened the door of the moving stagecoach and jumped straight into dry canyons, convinced they were jumping into cool water. It wasn't madness or suicide. It was the brain giving the wrong command based on distorted information. Drivers found mangled bodies at the bottom of ravines without understanding what had happened. Number 19. Old West stagecoaches had a problem that few people talk about. Passengers traveled packed in too tight, and a lot of them slept with their legs hanging out of the cabin. At night, on the more isolated routes of Arizona and New Mexico, coyotes would follow the trail of stagecoaches that stopped to rest the horses. The animals would come up silently and bite whatever they found exposed. There are reports from the 1880s of passengers who woke up with serious wounds on their legs and feet without understanding what had happened. The open design of these carriages was never meant to protect against wildlife. It was basically a wooden box with thin curtains moving through the territory of hungry nighttime predators. Number 20. In the Old West, buying a stagecoach ticket was an act of faith. There was no verification system, no reliable serial number, and no central office to confirm whether the ticket was legit. Scammers set up makeshift counters in small towns, sold worthless pieces of paper, and vanished before dawn. The traveler only found out it was a scam when the stagecoach rolled right past the pickup point, or when the driver looked at the ticket and said it wasn't worth anything. With no telegraph access on most routes, there was no way to check anything in real time. In the 1870s, anyone who fell for this scam in remote stretches was left stranded in territory with no water, no shelter, and no clue when someone would come through again. Number 21. Survivors with lifelong scars. Making it to your destination didn't mean the problem was over. In fact, for a lot of people, that's when the real problem started. Months in a stagecoach left marks that didn't go away. Fractures that healed wrong on the way set crooked, with no doctor to fix them. Severe sunburns in the desert made the skin rot in layers. Fingers lost to frostbite in the mountains. In the 1860s, cities like Denver and Virginia City had a visible population of broken men who arrived in one piece and ended up wrecked. Unable to work in mines, on farms, or in construction, they became beggars on the same streets they had dreamed of conquering. The body collected the fare the wallet had already paid.